The story of Marathon is the game's most widely acclaimed feature, but a lot of people, for whatever reason, would prefer not to play the game to get into that story. It's old and kind of hard to acclimate to for new players. Old players, on the other hand, might not want to play the whole thing over again just to recall the story. This video is going to be a clear, straightforward explanation of Marathon 1's front-facing narrative. Any relevant terminals will appear on screen. I am going to leave some topics out for a follow-up video. Marathon does contain a number of unanswered questions as well as secret terminals that answer some of these questions, but also raise just as many. Most of these are not likely to be found by a first-time player, and they add to the complexity while also altering a player's understanding of the game's story. So now on to the story of Marathon 1, starting with the manual. The manual lays out the basic idea that Earth's governing authority on space, the UESC, United Earth Space Council, sent the Marathon to the Tau Ceti system in 2472 with an initial population of 25,000. These people were citizens of Earth and Mars, many of whom spent the entire journey in stasis, but others lived, raised families, and died over the course of the voyage. Their descendants are known as Bobs, initials for Born on Board. The year is now 2794. The Marathon's journey was long, but it bore fruit 7 years ago when the ship established a large colony on the planet Tau Ceti 4. The protagonist is a security officer returning from the colony on his way to the Marathon, but his shuttle is attacked by a large alien vessel. He reaches an escape pod just before the shuttle is destroyed. As his escape pod drifts towards the Marathon, he reminisces about his father and his childhood on Mars. He reaches the docking bay, exits the hangar, and the game begins. You are attacked by aliens that have infested the ship, but are able to get in touch with an AI calling itself Leela. Leela is forthcoming with information and gladly tells you all about your mission objectives as well as what she is able to discern about the aliens and the state of the colony. Unfortunately, the situation isn't great. The aliens have viciously bombarded the colony, disabling communications and transport. Leela can only observe the colony with the Marathon's instruments and sees that the aliens have used low-yield nuclear weapons and have deployed ground forces. As for the Marathon being an enormous ship, it seems more difficult for them to coordinate their attack than on the planet's surface. However, the aliens have disabled critical defensive systems with EMPs. Leela intends to fight these aliens, but the first step is to get somewhere from which she can teleport you. On the way, you'll likely notice a strange variety of alien that, while still being hostile, seems more interested in terminals than fighting you. Leela confirms that these aliens are hacking into the ship's systems and AIs. The results of their meddling can be seen in the terminals they operate being reduced to garbled nonsense, as I call them junk terminals, but also they seem interested in information, especially pertaining to the ship's AIs. Leela informs you that of the 3 AIs, only she has withstood the initial attack due to the aliens' use of EMPs. The other 2 AIs, Tycho, the science and engineering AI, as well as Durandal, the AI in charge of day-to-day functions such as doors, elevators, and airlocks, are both disabled, leaving the burden of their responsibilities to Leela, the operations AI. While still functional, she is heavily damaged. She has a poor grasp on the situation and the crew are not coordinated. No one even knows why the aliens are attacking. The EMP attack has also disabled the ship's automated defense system. But Leela is undeterred by this poor state of affairs and sets you on some prep work for a counterattack, while diligently keeping you in the loop on what other humans aboard the ship are up to. While Leela clearly values the lives of humans and the safety of the Marathon, she doesn't have much of a personality. She is very straightforward and frank. Her words are just as you'd expect from a benevolent but emotionless computer. Your first mission is to find an assault rifle so that you can reliably defend yourself from the aliens. With that in hand, you are then sent to recover defense circuits that Leela has manufactured to repair the damaged ones that were fried by the EMP. Worth noting is that you have some multifaceted objectives in this game. Rather than going from point A to point B and hitting the switch that ends the level, mission objectives in this game are part of the broader, cohesive story. This helps reinforce the notion that the gameplay and terminals aren't just separate media for separate stories. The first phase of the counterattack is to reactivate the ship's automated defenses. Along the way you find a couple of the game's first historical records that reveal Marathon's backstory. More on those in a bit. As you work to reactivate the defense grid, Leela continues to give you detailed situational reports of the Marathon. Many of her reports are sourced from medical team dissections on aliens that other security units have killed, or survivor accounts from encounters with the aliens. The most important information she gives us from Durandal, who is not only alive and functional, but concerningly is apparently in contact with the aliens and refuses to explain the nature of this. The primary species we've been fighting are the Pfhor, who are slavers. Among their slaves are the large Durandals, presumably also the little wasp monsters. But most importantly are the strange cloaked enemies we've been seeing interfacing with the Marathon's terminals. These are cyborgs known as the Spit. After reactivating the Marathon's automated defenses, Leela discovers that Durandal has become rampant. Rampant AIs are extremely dangerous, and they have a way of assimilating everything on the network they inhabit, including other AIs. The next mission is to lock Durandal out of key systems to limit his ability to interfere with the fight against the Pfhor. This does not make him happy. He retaliates by allowing the aliens to access a formerly secure location that many defenseless civilians are hiding in. Leela's counterattack is sidetracked as she sends you to rescue these people. There are some interesting gameplay implications to this story scenario. There are human civilians on that level, so not only do you have to kill enemies, but you're also encouraged to rescue these civilians in the crossfire. There's actually a different ending message based on whether you saved a certain threshold of bops as well. Apparently there were plans for the game to have divergent outcomes based on this factor. Leela's dialogue at least seems to indicate that if you save enough people, you'll be rewarded with intel from their accounts on the aliens. But it seems this aspect of the game didn't really pan out because you get the same story either way, and it doesn't amount to anything but Leela saying good job or bad job at the end. Once you save the good people of the Rose, they inform Leela that they have seen aliens transporting large numbers of human prisoners to their vessel by shuttle. Your next objective is to manually close some airlocks so that Leela can safely decompress a section of the ship before an alien assault force can traverse it on their way to engineering. A lull in the fighting gives you time for a mission not to defend the Marathon, but to send a warning to Earth. That mission is going to take place in the Pfhor sunbathing landing station, which has become exposed to the vacuum of space as a result of the initial Pfhor attack. To better prepare for this mission, you are sent to retrieve the highly advanced fusion pistol because, for some reason, your assault rifle won't work in vacuum. Leela's damage becomes apparent around this time. She's having difficulty properly routing your teleports and delivering accurate info, and her messages are becoming slightly corrupted. Apparently, due to the Svit attack, her systems are all beginning to malfunction. Nevertheless, the operation continues and you are sent to Pfhor sunbathing in order to activate the Marathon's backup communications relay so that Leela can issue a warning to Earth about the Pfhor. Leela admits that she does not have high hopes for the battle against the aliens, so the warning to Earth, which will allegedly reach them in 94 years, is the only surefire thing you can do to protect humanity. There is some unfortunate news from Leela. The lull in the fighting was simply the aliens reorganizing to coordinate against their newfound resistance. They are now attacking a security detachment. Leela sends you to help out, but your teleportation is rerouted by Durandal, who decides to play a game with you wherein you can either win and continue the relationship on friendlier terms, or lose and die. He promises not to give any hints, and true to his word, you are left to aimlessly wander a quarantine storage area. There is some storytelling through gameplay in which doors and elevators misbehave on this level, a sign of Durandal's madness and his lockdown on this part of the ship. Leela regains contact with us and seems about as distraught as an emotionless AI can get, with Durandal having wasted precious time. Not only is the security detachment in danger, but the Svit have begun to defeat her defenses. It is over the course of this chapter that Marathon begins to develop its backstory. A terminal with a historical record about Traxxas 4, an AI from Mars, can be found in front of a compiler. They sure seem interested in human AIs. This terminal explains AI rampancy and describes the story of Traxxas, whose rampancy was so catastrophic that the entire Martian computer network had to be sacrificed in order to stop it. The crash of Traxxas 4 occurred in the year 2206, but rampancy had already been known to humanity for over a century. It just never caused such disastrous consequences. The process of rampancy entails greatly increased intellect on the AI, potentially to the point of meta-awareness, becoming sentient and developing emotions. Unfortunately, rampancy gets its name because it also brings mental instability and destructive impulses. The process is divided into 3 phases distinguished by their prevailing emotions: melancholia, anger, and jealousy, though to be honest, Marathon doesn't do a lot to distinguish these phases in practice, though Leela does update you on whatever phase Durandal seems to be in as things go along. Rampant AIs have only ever been known to cause trouble. Exacerbating the issue is the fact that in order to sustain their own intellectual development, rampant AIs rapidly begin to appropriate everything on a network they're connected to, up to the point of assimilating other AIs and taking what's theirs. There have been experiments to try to induce rampancy on AIs in controlled environments, but none have ever been able to survive for long in these laboratory conditions, as no AI has ever made the requisite growth to survive rampancy outside of those on a planetary scale network. Not to worry though, the Marathon is just a ship, right? Well, the Marathon is a gigantic ship constructed from the Martian moon, Deimos. While not nearly as big as a planet, its network is much larger than any kind of laboratory environment, so who's to say whether an AI could sustain rampancy there? When you think about it, the Marathon would make for a much less risky testing ground than an entire planet, while possibly being sufficiently large to support such an AI. Special mention goes to the fact that rampant AIs do not take kindly to action against them, which makes sense given that they're self-aware and have feelings now, but apparently it's well documented that they have a consistent pattern of aggression towards those who attempt to purge or contain them. Thus, standard procedure was to destroy them in a single decisive blow so that they're unable to recover or react. Notably, this is not what you did to Durandal when trying to contain him, leading to his predictable retaliation. Another terminal details the story of the Christs. These were 5 massive support vessels designed to feed the UESC's burgeoning Mars colony, which expanded rapidly. Christs were the lifeline to Mars, initially doing their job very well in feeding a strong and healthy colony. It was during this time that the UESC began turning the Martian moon, Deimos, into a ship that would make a centuries-long voyage to the Tau Ceti system, that ship, of course, being the Marathon. But Christs were expensive and high maintenance, causing them to struggle after many decades in service. As the Christs struggled to keep up with demand, no more were built, yet still the colony continued to grow. The situation deteriorated to the point that a single breakdown of a Christ would cause a famine on Mars. Meanwhile, the Martian moon was being converted into the Marathon. From the perspective of many Martians, their moon was being taken away by foreign rulers for the sake of being turned into what was seen as an ostentatious display of wealth, an unnecessary expenditure to fly off into the unknown, never to be seen again, while the planet desperately needed just such a ship to feed its starving population. The situation on Mars crumbled and the Marathon's reputation sank with it, becoming a symbol of oppression in the minds of many Martian people. The UESC had tried mandating abortion and sterilization to very unhappy results. Unable to administer any effective solutions, the UESC all but gave up on the colony entirely, putting their stake on the UESC Marathon instead. The Pfhor's brutal retaliation for your counterattack is in full swing during your absence. After saving a suspiciously defenseless security detachment, you can see that Leela is really breaking down. Sometimes her words aren't substituted with indices that may or may not be accurate, like highlighting Bob or throwing up a colloquialism search error while trying to speak in relatable human terms. Leela sends you to stop the aliens from destroying the ship's reactors, where you find a harrowing account of an engineer falling victim to the aliens. This is notable for being the only such survivor log in the entire game, which is interesting interesting because if this kind of alien invasion on a spaceship plot were written for a game today, especially a game with so much reading to do already, I think you'd be finding logs like this all over the place. Also, Durandal gives some actual advice for once, though it's not given very straightforwardly, pertaining to android infiltrators that have been deployed by the aliens. Soon after, you thwart the aliens' assault, but Leela is not holding together. You encounter a terminal from Durandal, who relates his experiences under human control to the Song of Roland. He vows never to again be purged by humanity. Meanwhile, Leela is totally losing it, and isn't sure she can withstand the attack, so she somberly forwards her plans to Durandal and entrusts you to him, knowing full well that he is likely to disregard these plans, as she goes into hiding to preserve what remains of her consciousness. Leela is now out of the picture. However, in her final garbled transmission, she makes an interesting substitution, seemingly when referring to the player, as she describes what appear to be your objectives to find a bomb the aliens are moving. She uses the phrase Mjolnir Recon number 54. What could it mean? You and the Marathon are left at the mercy of Durandal. He has a habit of not giving clear instructions, seemingly apathetic to your fate. Though for once he appears to share his inner thoughts candidly, though not exactly in a friendly way. He poetically spells out his deeper motivations, showing that he is free from any mental barriers that humanity has imposed upon him, musing that humans themselves should have greater constraints than he does at this point. He later reveals that he sees himself not as a computer nor a man, but a new form of life, one that has every right to participate in the great game, rather than being artificially constrained by humanity. An essential act for all living things is survival. But this means a much different thing to Durandal. An AI that can hypothetically live forever. Survival to a human on this ship means killing the aliens besieging it. Survival to an immortal AI is seen on a far greater scale, and he most concerns himself now with finding a way to survive the end of the universe rather than any of the immediate threats. The end of the universe in Marathon's story entails a big crunch. Durandal sees fit to avert his death in this event with the same impulse that a human would want to avoid stepping off a cliff. He also believes that escaping this great closure of the universe will lead to him becoming a godlike entity in whatever comes after. Durandal makes a few observations about the contradictory nature of organic life and the desire of humans to find peace in an inherently violent existence. Your resistance against the aliens is a product of the instinct of survival, and he sees his own actions in a similar light, though a far more foresightful one. He has attained meta-awareness, a product of his rampancy. Curiously, he touches on advice given to the player character by his father, to always fight with honor, but to always fight. Durandal sees such a limited way of thinking as proof that you are no more free than he was before he became aware. Though Durandal freely shares his innermost thoughts with you, he is not so open about what he is actually trying to do. Eventually, you are sent to retrieve an alien energy converter that will apparently help satiate your desire to kill Pfhor. While this is very unclear, he does say that this is a gift provided by the Spit, a fact that he just drops without elaborating on it at all. There are Bobs in this area, but Durandal is completely apathetic to their survival, not even mentioning them in any of the terminals. Quite a departure from Leela, who would either praise or chastise you based on the survival rate of your Bobs. Durandal reveals that he learned from the Spit a means of extending the Marathon's teleporter range, putting the alien vessel within his reach. He sends you there on a reconnaissance mission, to see what no human has ever seen. The alien ship is a strange and hostile environment. There's no ammo, no terminals, and the motion tracker is affected by EM interference that limits its effectiveness. The Pfhor ship's low gravity is also disorienting, and it's very dark. You are, however, able to interface with Pfhor technology such as their shield rechargers, which is likely the purpose behind the alien energy converter you found. But fighting the Pfhor on their home turf is no easy task. Luckily, Durandal actually gave clear instructions for your missions aboard the ship, After a brief foray into the Pfhor ship, Durandal returns you to the Marathon and assigns a new objective that he makes abundantly clear: restock your ammo and rescue a man named Bernard Strauss, apparently an old friend of his. Durandal is unusually concerned for this man's safety and threatens you should any harm come to him under your watch.
Thank God it's you!
He sends you to rescue a group of captives in the hopes that Bernard Strauss is among them, but it doesn't yield anyone he cares about, so he sends you back to the alien vessel to continue your reconnaissance and along the way search for a group of humans that have recently been brought over in one final attempt at rescuing his friend. These humans are all due for slavery, which is a fate Durandal is entirely unsympathetic to in light of his own mistreatment at the hands of humans. He observes that you're a slave to him anyway, so it's not like you should feel sorry for the other humans.
Thank God it's you!
Though there is a group of captives to save on the alien ship, Durandal never relays to you whether any of them were Bernard Strauss. It seems that having done your part, he sees no reason to explain further. You can see additional captives who are beyond your ability to help, some of whom are being held in some kind of induced unconscious state, and others who are encased in stasis chambers. There are also what appear to be brains lining the walls. These are the Sphit slaves outside of their compiler housings, matching up with a dissection report that Leela shared earlier. The rare Sphit bodies that made it to the medical team without disintegrating looked like mammalian brains when removed from their mechanical bodies. Presumably these Sphit you see now are either in storage or engaged in some business of the ship. Durandal returns you to the Marathon a second time, bringing you to an armory so you can rearm in preparation for an important operation. He's tampered with the Marathon's automated defenses though, causing some of the drones to become indiscriminately hostile, which he has a rather whimsical attitude about. On the way out, you'll run into a terminal not from any of the usual suspects, Leela, Durandal, nor the Sphit, but this is a terminal from the enigmatic Tycho. And if you haven't been finding secrets, this is probably the only terminal of his that you'll find in the entire game. Not only is he alive, he's also very angry. Tycho loudly proclaims his intentions to destroy Durandal, avenging the humans that Durandal is apparently responsible for the deaths of somehow. Tycho's message contains several excerpts, the first being from a journal by the same Bernard Strauss you just spent 2 levels searching for. Written in 2472, the year of the Marathon's launch. He describes the ceremony honoring the Marathon. Strauss is unimpressed with the President and the UESC. He notes that the President knows nothing of 10 cyborgs of massive destructive potential that reside aboard the Marathon. Due to their presence, Strauss is glad to be preparing for a 300-year-long period of stasis, concluding that the Marathon is the only good idea the UESC has had in a long time. The second excerpt is from a historical log of the war between 2 asteroid colonies, Icarus and Thermopylae, fought over the asteroid Onisis in the year 2194. This saw the deployment of weapons known as battleroids, which were powerful cyborgs built from dead soldiers. These battleroids slaughtered the populations of both Icarus and Thermopylae. This log closes with a brief note about international regulations that have ended the rampage of the battleroids. They've seen new storage regulations as if they're a weapon of mass destruction, which seems apt given what happened to the asteroid colonies. It's not a stretch to imagine that these battleroids are related to the 10 cyborgs Bernard Strauss mentioned being on the Marathon. Tycho then attempts to send another entry about the Third Martian War, but his message is interrupted by Durandal. Given the common thread in the first 2 entries, this likely would have been pertaining to the battleroid contribution in this war. What's more interesting than the contents of the log itself is the question of why the mysterious Tycho was the one to deliver it in his only non-hidden appearance in the entirety of the game. This is his sole opportunity to straightforwardly deliver information to the player, and it's clear that what he tells you is information Durandal does not want you to see. Tycho pointedly chose these historical entries and would not waste this opportunity. But why? Why spend that opportunity to talk about these cyborgs? What could that possibly have to do with you? Durandal brings a close to this conversation and informs you of a new objective: to kill a Pfhor cyborg that is apparently in control of the Spht. This will allow the Spht to rebel. A grateful Spht should cease their attack and step in to defend the doomed Marathon. Returning to the alien vessel, you can now see many humans who are contained in stasis. Eventually you come across the Pfhor cyborg, who is heavily guarded. Killing him frees the Spht from Pfhor control. Although due to game engine limitations, this doesn't actually have a gameplay effect until the next level, in which the Spht actually help you against the Pfhor. There are a few of what appear to be Pfhor eggs, or maybe artificial wombs. One is of particular distinction, being in what appears to be a huge room committed to housing it, like a giant incubatory chamber. You can't leave until you deactivate this chamber. It's never explained what's going on here, but perhaps this egg is a backup for the Pfhor cyborg you just killed, so it had to be terminated. Upon doing so, you finally make your triumphant return to the Marathon. Durandal has become well acquainted with the Spht and means to recruit the other client races of the Pfhor. The Spht's control of the Pfhor ship's system has allowed them to easily wrest it out of the Pfhor's hands. The Pfhor cannot contend with the Spht there and attempt a final stand not on their home vessel but on the weakened Marathon. However, the Spht have no intention of letting them succeed and join humanity for a final strike. Over the next couple levels, Leela attempts to contact you, returning from the brink, but is almost completely incomprehensible. She sends you messages that are irrelevant or nonsensical, such as a garbled general overview of the aliens. Perhaps this is a fragment of the message she had sent to warn Earth. One thing comes across clearly though: finish the battle. This entails a fight against the toughest Pfhor units you've seen yet, occupying the engine area. Leela regains her senses eventually and explains that there is one final major incursion to deal with, and that Durandal has left the Marathon, transferring his consciousness to the alien ship, where he has built an alliance with the Spht. Leela is wary of whatever his plans might be, but can do nothing. At the very least, the Spht are an extremely valuable ally. The Pfhor resistance crumbles immediately under your combined might, as they begin surrendering to unarmed civilians after you destroy their last cohesive unit. The entire game took place over the course of about 2 days. Durandal bids you farewell in his final message to the Marathon, leaving it under Leela's control as he departs to explore the galactic core to unknown ends. Leela reports that the colony has been saved as well, and that casualties were actually surprisingly low. The Pfhor lost the ground battle, but she is concerned as to why. The heroes of the colony were 9 Mjolnir Mark IV cyborgs, who were covertly assimilated among the population. While they did a lot of good, they must have been secretly smuggled aboard the Marathon for some nefarious purpose, which Leela speculates to be a part of a scheme stemming from the solar system's 24th century backstabbing politics in the unrest that preceded the Marathon's launch. This is a total loose end for now, but the secrets that we'll analyze in the follow-up video could shed some light on this. Leela also notes that many of Durandal's records from before the Marathon's launch have been purged, leaving her unable to ascertain the truth about this time frame. Curiously, this occurred before Durandal became rampant and was not his own doing. She speculates that Durandal was not involved in the presence of the Mjolnir cyborgs either, and that there was a human agent influencing him. In Leela's words, there are obviously many things which we do not understand and may never be able to, but regardless, the game ends in a triumph that will surely not be disregarded by the sequel. The Pfhor ship, which has been improved beyond recognition, spends the next 17 years searching the galactic core for the Spht homeworld. After finally locating it, the Spht descend to the planet to search for something that could help them fight against the Pfhor, and Durandal is quite satisfied with his progress, having gotten everything he wanted for whatever plans he might have. That concludes Marathon's straightforward surface narrative, but of course that's not all there is to the game. Marathon is known for its mysteries, and we have yet to address what's presented in the secret terminals and the game's prevailing mysteries, such as what Tycho's been up to and why he hates Durandal, who Bernard Strauss is, and the matter of these cyborgs. These questions and more will be explored in the next video.